Within the INNOPATHS project, we looked at the financial means that are required based on the scenarios developed to achieve a carbon neutral economy by 2050. So when you look at these scenarios, what they usually tell you is how much finance is needed, but they don't tell you where the money is coming from. And that is basically what we looked at within the INNOPATHS project. So we looked at different sources of finance, we looked at the availability of finance, we looked at the behavior of investors, and we looked also at the policy environment that may or may not be conducive to mobilizing private finance. My name is Friedemann Polzin. I worked with a large range of researchers in the INNOPATHS projects on questions relating to financing the European energy transition. Decarbonizing the European energy sector is an investment challenge, no doubt. It will cost approximately 80 to 200 billion euros per year. The money needed predominantly should come from private financial sources. And that depends on what kind of technologies we're talking about. If we're talking about mature technologies like solar parks and wind farms, institutional investors can engage because these are low-risk technologies and they have the sufficient scale. But if you talk about novel technologies such as power to hydrogen, for example, then you definitely need more risk-carrying capital and also public money in order to get these technologies off the ground. If you look at the European financial system, there is more than enough money available to finance the European energy transition. In fact, there's 2 to 6 times available of what we actually need until 2050. But depending on what kind of technologies you look at, there are barriers to investment. Investments in new technologies required for the energy transition is still a niche. If you look at private financiers for the European energy transition, you need to take into account that these are commercial entities, so they are profit-driven. That also means they balance their potential profit against the risks that they might face. So if a technology is new, we ask the question, does it actually work and delivers what it has promised? If the technology is mature, then you look at the market risks and then you look at how does the policy environment look like? Is it predictable and can I base my investment decisions on these policies for a long time horizon? There are a number of solutions to the barriers that I mentioned. One of them can come from the government. So that means for mature technologies, they need to provide a policy framework that is reliable, stable, over a longer period of time. On the other hand, you have novel technologies and they require more direct government intervention. So reducing the risks that these investors face more directly, for example, by co-investments through state investment banks. Financing costs are currently at an all-time low, and that is not likely to change after the COVID-19 pandemic. So in order to get a green recovery, namely creating new jobs in the sectors that we need for the decarbonization, it is of utmost importance to use this window of opportunity to mobilize private finance for the projects that we need in the next 20 years. And that can also be supported by a European Central Bank, for example, so that they can actually channel the money that is being created towards these projects that are crucial in the next 20 years. Financing the energy transition requires engagement from both government and private sector. From the government point of view, you need to provide a stable policy environment in order to mobilize, for example, institutional investors. But you also need to play a role in the early stages of technology development, because we simply don't know all the technologies that we need in order to achieve net zero by 2050. Finally, we need to focus our post-COVID-19 recovery strategies, for example the Green New Deal, on investments into the energy transition. We have shown in the INNOPATHS project the scenarios that we developed and the financeability that we researched that this is possible.